All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're at, and welcome. This is the Telerik R2 2019 release webinar. We are live today from our global headquarters in Bedford, Massachusetts, and we are here to unpack our second release of 2019, which was a very big release for us. So thank you for joining us. We know that most of you who are on these webinars with us are already using Telerik and Kendo UI bits, so thank you. For those of you, we can hopefully show you all the new and cool things we have been putting into our product suites. And if you're brand new to the Telerik and Kendo UI families, hopefully we can show you all the different things we do to make developers more productive. So my name is Sam Basu, and
I'm Ed Charbeneau.
Yep, we are both developer advocates. We mostly focus on the Telerik side of the family. Progress Software does a lot of different things. This is the Telerik side of the release, and Ed's going to show you the two upcoming webinars that we have for Kendo UI.
Yeah, I do all things web, so I'll fill you guys in about all our web dev technologies and point you in the right direction for some Kendo UI webinars that are coming up.
All right, so what you see is our social handles, both for me and Ed. So if you need to reach out to us after the webinar, you know where to find us on social like Twitter or GitHub. That's where we are at. All right, so let's begin with a little bit of feedback and how we want to do these webinars going forward. So we have a lot of different products in the Telerik DevCraft bundle. It's almost like 22, 23 different products. It's a lot,
Hundreds
actually.
of controls.
Yes. So our engineers, I mean, every release we stand on the shoulder of giants. Our engineers, our PMs, our QA people pour in a lot of effort, and then we try to cover everything they have put together in an hour, which is really hard. And it's hard for us to do justice to all of the products. So we're going to try things maybe a little differently this year. What we're going to do is maybe break this up into two parts, kind of like a long Indian movie. So we'll do like a first half, and we're going to do all of the web stuff that Ed's going to cover, and then we'll take a quick break in between, and then we'll do come back for the second half, and we'll do all of the other things like mobile and desktop and reporting and other developer productivity tools. Now, a lot of people that customers that we talk to, they don't realize that DevCraft actually includes everything that we do.
It does.
Under the Telerik umbrella. So we would love for all of you to stick with us throughout the webinar. But in case you just don't want to do the web at all, it's not something you want to do ever, you can come back after 45 minutes, or if you want to just look at the mobile and desktop stuff, you know where to find us. But hopefully, we don't want to kind of keep all of you guys, you're all busy, so we don't want to keep you all day long or half a day. So we thought 2 45-minute sessions is a good, fair amount of time to cover most of our products.
Plus you get 2 bonus minutes of jazz music.
There you go. All right, so that's the plan. Let us know how this works, and if we are able to talk through most of the products that you are using and the things that you're passionate about. So let us know how this is working, and we'll adjust. Okay? So as we dive into this, like I said, we are live here from Boston, but keep asking us questions. You have a Q&A panel in the webinar. You can also ask us questions on the public forum and on Twitter using the hashtag #HeyTelerik. It's nicer because it leaves a nice breadcrumb because we can get back to you. We will try to answer as many questions as we can. When Ed is speaking, I'll try to answer, and vice versa. And we actually have a small army of folks who help us out. So the engineers and the PMs who build our stuff, they're also on the call. So this is your opportunity to fire away as many questions as you can so we can answer them.
Yeah, actually have people from around the world answering questions for us right now. It's pretty amazing.
Yep. And in case you have to run for a meeting or you have any interruptions, we are recording this live and in HD. So we'll put up the link to the webinar recording as soon as we can up on YouTube. So don't fear that you're missing out anything. So let's talk about what we do here for the Telerik side of the family. So we're all about .NET. We do a lot of JavaScript, but this is the .NET side of the release. We are trying to make modern UI for all things .NET, web, desktop, and mobile. And it's a lot of different technologies to cover, but we are hoping to keep developers productive all through. Now, before we go into our stuff, here's just maybe a couple of slides to look into what .NET is. These are Microsoft slides that I'm sure you have seen. .NET has evolved a lot.
Right? Yeah, it really has.
Yeah, it's not just the Windows-centric .NET anymore. It's for desktop and AI and IoT, all things cloud. And the tools of your trade have evolved a lot as well as Visual Studio across Windows, Mac, and Visual Studio Code. This is the .NET that we kind of have today. We have a couple of different base class libraries for .NET Framework, which is what we are used to for the last 15 years. We have .NET Core, which is it's kind of written from ground up. It runs cross-platform CLR, low footprint, and then Xamarin runs on Mono, which is the port of .NET. So all of this is here today, and .NET Standard helps us share code between different platforms. I wanted to throw in a little bit as to what's coming up next. This is later in this year. I'm sure most of you have already tuned in to Microsoft's Build conference. These were some announcements that came out. So we are essentially staring at the next version of .NET, and this will be big because whether you like it or not, you might think that .NET is getting a little fragmented. You kind of had to choose the .NET that you want for your applications. They're trying to kind of unify everything into one .NET, or they're calling it .NET 5. It'll be the same API, same tools, same canvas for you to build whatever type of applications that you want, and you can choose the runtimes.
And this is a stopping point for .NET Framework 4.x.
Right. Yeah.
And from now on, it'll be one unified framework of .NET 5, which is kind of the migration of .NET Core into the next generation.
Yeah. So nothing's going away. It's all getting unified. .NET Framework is here to stay with Windows. .NET Core will see a lot of investments, and a lot of the good parts about Mono are going to get baked into a unified platform for .NET Core and Mono. So good things for developers. So we want to make sure no matter how you're building your .NET apps, web, desktop, and mobile, our tools and our UI work for any ID and any platform that you're building for. So that's the goal. Right. So with that in mind, we have two big family of products here at Progress. So all of you are used to the Telerik line, which is our .NET UI, again for all things WPF, WinForms for desktop, UWP for mobile. We have Xamarin. We have all things web with ASP.NET, which Ed will talk about, and then we have Kendo UI, which is our JavaScript side of the family, which is front-end HTML5 JavaScript. And Kendo UI to me is an example of how the web has evolved in the last like 6-7 years. We started off as a pure jQuery library, but now we make components for Angular, React, and Vue.
And those have some of those have no jQuery dependencies on them. So our Angular and React components are written from the ground up, from scratch.
Yeah. So developers can build for the web however they want, bring your framework, and some of these things have repercussions for the ASP.NET stack, because we will give you wrappers to render the same Kendo UI bits from ASP.NET MVC and ASP.NET Core. So let's dive into these things. The whole purpose of us doing these releases is to kind of have our feet on both sides of the boat here. So we want to be future-facing on things that's coming out of Microsoft, but we also want to invest heavily into what we call legacy. But this is what runs your applications, enterprise. This is what businesses run on. So all of your WPF WinForms stacks, Microsoft is giving you a way to modernize things, and we want to be right there with you as you modernize your desktop applications as well. So you'll see us doing a little bit of both future investments and making sure we are solidifying what we have for you today. So with that, let's talk about the R2 2019 release. It actually went out like 10 days or so back. So if you're using our stuff, you should already have the newest bits. But for every one of our products, head to blogs.telerik.com. That's where our PMs and our engineers really try to showcase and document everything that went into every product. And it's a big release. So there are lots of blog posts for each product. So pick the one that you're working with and see what we have done for you. So that's a good place to kind of start looking into. And get the hot bits. Again, there is no reason why you should be using older stuff, especially if you already have DevCraft. So however you want to use our things, and people have different ways of using our UI. If you're using like a control panel, or if you're just downloading the DLLs from the web, go ahead and do that. If you're using NuGet packages, you should see those updates coming through. So again, however you want to do it, get the latest bits. Because everything that we show you today, those light up once you have the R2 2019 bits.
And the Telerik control panel is fantastic if you haven't tried that out. Yeah, it's a one-stop shop for all the tools that you have in your license.
Exactly. So everything that we make, it shows up on the Telerik control panel, and you can just click and upgrade the tools that you want. Okay. So with that, here are a couple of highlights for our R2 release. You'll see that we are focusing on you being able to ship apps that work for your enterprise. So we are concerned about accessibility. We are making sure things that run businesses like PDF processing, like reporting, those are key functionality for your businesses. Those roll as smoothly as possible. And then we are putting in investments on the web stack, on the .NET stack with mobile and desktop. I will let Ed talk about all things UI for Blazor if you want to stay on the cutting edge with WebAssembly. Ed has dedicated the rest of his life to Blazor, so I'm sure he'll be happy to talk about all things Blazor. But again, you see all of the things that we're doing, new controls for mobile, new controls for desktop, and all throughout the suite, you will see us using VS 2019, both of us. So support for VS 2019 Windows and Mac, and kind of looking ahead of the future, .NET Core 3 is coming out later this year. So we will already want to have support for it. So you're thinking about modernizing your apps with some of these things. So again, the overall goal is developer productivity. We want to make sure you are comfortable with the IDEs that you're using and our tools work everywhere. And we are pushing the envelope on newer technologies.
Yep. We've been working really close with Microsoft on all this stuff to make sure that we are right up to speed with all the latest releases that they're coming out with the new .NET Core bits.
Absolutely. Okay, so one last thing before we kind of dive into the bits for this release. We care a lot. I mean, we are developers. We care a lot about documentation. If we struggle, everybody else is going to struggle. So we pour in a lot of effort behind our docs. So if you are using some of the newer bits, take a look at docs.telerik.com or demos.telerik.com if you want to play around with some of the demos. We really put in a lot of effort to make sure that developers have an easy time using the newest bits and the newest features. And if you want to talk to us, feedback.telerik.com. Tell us what you want to see in your product suites, right? So with that, let's switch gears to the web side of the family, and Ed's going to talk about all things ASP.NET, WebForms, MVC, and Blazor, right?
Absolutely.
All right, so with that, I'm going to let you take over.
So while Sam switches over control of the universe to me, I've got some bits from everything from AJAX to MVC to .NET Core, and the latest and greatest from Blazor. So there we go. First, though, I want to give a shout out to our Kendo UI webinars. So if you're using Kendo UI, you're just using plain JavaScript on the front end, you're using React, Angular, jQuery, Vue for the front end of your .NET app, those webinars will be on Tuesday, June 4th and Thursday, June 6th. So the React webinar, so it'll just be all things React, will be the 4th. And then all of the other frameworks for Kendo UI will be on the 6th. So if you're using either of those, make sure you check those out. We've dedicated an entire hour for each of those. On to the .NET side of things, though. Telerik UI for ASP.NET. So I'm talking about AJAX, MVC, ASP.NET Core, and Telerik UI for Blazor. We're going to cover those things. We actually have some new controls this time around for the Telerik UI for AJAX. And this is, it's going to be a common theme that you're going to hear throughout the rest of the webinar, that we take our feedback very seriously and we put that into the product. And these are things that people were asking for, and we wanted to provide them out of the box. So one of the new control features is a confirmation dialog that comes with the rad button. So you have things like a delete button that you want to put on your application, and you want to present confirmation that you want them to be able to say that it's okay to delete a file or a record or something like that. That's actually just baked-in functionality now right inside of the button. So you can wire the button up and just turn on a flag, and as soon as somebody clicks on that button, you're presented with this dialog, and you have full control over the APIs there on what you want to present them and what functionality the buttons on that dialog do. So that's a nice out-of-the-box feature that we added for AJAX. So while AJAX is an older product and it's kind of battle-tested and it's not going anywhere, we're still adding new things to it, which is nice.
I think like WebForms is incredibly productive for developers to kind of spin something up and get it out. And I mean, there are lots
Absolutely.
and lots of huge applications that are web forms, and you don't have to do web forms like the way you did web forms like 10 years back. You can do AJAXified web forms, which are limiting the number of times you go back and forth between client and server. And we give you near UI every release to keep things exciting.
In R1, we added the rad multi-column combo box. In this release, we've updated that combo box with brand new themes, so they follow with all of the AJAX themes that you have in your application. And we've also committed some other enhancements to that UI as well. So this is a stable platform that everybody loves to develop on. If we modernize a little bit, we have our Telerik UI for MVC, and I've put core in here as well because a lot of the things that you see in ASP.NET MVC with our Telerik UI components also translate over to core as well. So these are our shared common updates that you're going to get on both products. There's some added things with core. I'll get into what those extra things are in just a moment. But for both of these frameworks, you get the brand new PDF viewer this time around. So you can display the contents of a PDF right in your application without your users having to go out and open a separate PDF application or viewer to view that file. So you can have full control over the UI that's surrounding that PDF viewer. So we've got that. That's another one of those customer feedback things again. This was something that a lot of people were asking for, and we delivered. Yeah. The new drawer component, I have to show a demo for that in a few minutes. This is one of my favorite new components. It's a really cool menu-style interface that is something that you would see in a responsive web app or even on a Windows Store application where you have like a nice fly-out menu. It's a really great addition to the suite. And then we have two new adaptive rendering options. So adaptive rendering is kind of like a next level responsive web style of approaching this multi-device universe. So we have people accessing our web application from mobile, desktop, web, any web browser at any size, basically, right? You have web browsers on refrigerators and watches and all these things. It's hard to make a UI that fits all of that, right? So we have responsive design where if you change the size of your page and say you have a data grid or something like that, you might drop some columns off to make it fit a little better. Adaptive takes things even further and changes out bits of the UI behavior. And in the data grid and the scheduler, we take things like filter menus and things and mobilize those pieces of UI for you. So you don't have to worry about that. You just take a flag and you get that behavior out of the box. There's some really nice, slick stuff. We definitely have to look at some demos of that. Of course, we're always improving our spreadsheet. It's one of our most popular components. We've got endless scrolling in our list view. Mobile support for the date range picker is nice. Those things were side by side, and if they're on mobile now, they conform to a mobile layout. Again, something else we got a lot of feedback on. And that's feedback also drove our data source, data binding for our menu. So that's included this time around. We've also updated our V6 templates. So in Visual Studio, you can do File New, and then you can choose to start with a Telerik brand new project. We have grid, menu, and several other layouts that you can choose from. Microsoft has transitioned to Bootstrap 4 in the last couple updates. So we've followed in suit with that, and now all of our templates are Bootstrap 4 enabled as well. So you'll see that in this release.
So while you're going to the next one, Keith Jackson actually said, I think he was talking about the drawer. He was using rad window or rad alerts before to do that. Now he's glad he can have the drawer.
Yeah. So we provide a lot of these components that you can assemble and do these type of things manually. Yeah. But when we can provide it out of the box, it just makes things so much easier for the developer, and we add a lot more value that way. So it's really nice to see that happen. So I'm going to go out to demos.telerik.com, and we're going to look at some of the new bits that are out there. And I'm going to go ahead and go to the ASP.NET Core version of the site. And this is essentially the same bits that are available for ASP.NET MVC as well. What you're going to get with core that you don't get with MVC is tag helpers, because that's an ASP.NET Core feature. And I'll dive a little bit into the ASP.NET Core stuff in a minute. But what I want to go to is our data grid and look at that adaptive rendering demo that we have. And notice QR code. So you can take out your mobile phone, you can scan this QR code, and you can view the adaptive rendering behavior on your mobile device right there on your phone. I don't have that capability on a webinar, so I'm going to jump into developer tools. So I've pressed F12 on my laptop here, and now I have a simulated mobile view, and this is a Galaxy S5. We can also change this to maybe the new iPhone X. And what I have to do is refresh the page so the UI can pick up that this is now a mobile device. And notice that QR code went away. So I'm pretending that I'm a mobile device now, and I can see the new adaptive rendering behavior. What's nice about this adaptive rendering is I have the ability to scroll my columns here, but when I click on these little kebab menu items, you notice this nice flyout effect. And what this lets me do is I can come in and I can actually control what columns are visible. So if I wanted to turn off maybe the product name, I want to focus on what products are in stock. So I can kind of close down some of these columns, and then I can tap this checkbox and come back. Now I only have those two columns that I'm focused in on. I also have menus in here for filtering and sorting. So these things weren't very touch-friendly before. With adaptive rendering turned on, now I can just tap away on the device. Nice and easy, big hit targets that I can hit with my fingers, and the menu options are laid out in a nice format where I can work with those. And this also goes for editing as well. If I click edit, notice the nice form that comes up. It's all touch friendly. Everything's right there where I can reach it on my phone. And then I have the same checkbox type of interface. So users can get in tune with that really easily. Just tap, you have the checkbox to accept. So it's a really nice behavior. And this is like next level, like responsive design is nice. It gets you halfway there. This gets you to where it's a enterprise level application. So good stuff there. We also have similar behavior. Let me toggle out of developer mode here for a minute. We also have this adaptive behavior on our scheduler. So let's see, scheduler has been updated. You'll see that same adaptive render, and then let me point this out too. Let me go back for a sec to the main, let's see, the main demo page. And I'll jump back in there. What I want to show real quick is, notice all these green highlights throughout all of the components. These are things that have been updated, or there's a new component. Yeah. Like the PDF viewer, you can see the words "new" by there. This is always where I would go as a customer, because I was a Telerik customer for a long, long time. And whenever release day came out, this is the page I'd come to. And it was like Christmas Day. You go find all the little green hashes and look through all the new release stuff.
And I guess what's nice is all of these things are online, so you don't need to install anything. You can play around with the demos, and I think you can get the same bits working locally if you wanted to.
You can install the demos locally, and there's also code in the demos themselves that you can usually copy and paste for the most part. So I'm going to jump back into the scheduler for a sec, and that same green highlight is over on this adaptive rendering tab here. It says new, and again, QR code, no problem. I'm going to press F12. I've got my mobile simulation here. Again, it's an iPhone. And notice how the rendering just immediately changes and becomes more mobile friendly. And I also have the ability to create a new event. It slides over. It's a nice smooth UI. This is really, really well done. Very happy with these new features for these components. And these are some of our most popular components. The scheduler and the grid are just used by everyone in all sorts of scenarios. So this is a really big value add.
And I think it's important that, like, when you talk about building for mobile, you don't need to essentially build a mobile app every time. If you have a website, there is no reason why it cannot work nicely on a mobile device. So we give you all the tooling. If you're using any of our UI, it's all responsive, it's all adaptive, and it works. It's a good citizen on a mobile form factor.
Yeah. Mobile or web is really good at mobile, and it transitions well from desktop to those devices. And then companion apps are always great as well. So you can have a fully featured web application that does everything it needs to do, and you can still have a store app that's installed in from I'm not a Mac guy. I don't remember what the Apple Store is, but the Android, Google Play Store. You can have your apps in there as well, and still have a full web presence to go along with it.
Okay. While you're switching gears real quick, Michael Kober was asking if the adaptive rendering is also for ASP.NET AJAX, or is it for Core and MVC only?
I think it's for Core and MVC only. I don't believe we have adaptive on AJAX. Let's see. Let me double check real quick. I don't want to say we do and don't when we do, but I don't believe we do. No, I don't think we do.
Okay.
But that's something that you can enter into the feedback portal, and if we get enough people that want that adaptive rendering added to the grid there, we can look at adding that as well. The feedback.telerik.com is one of the best places to provide that sort of feedback. That's a great question there, Sam. We didn't look at the PDF viewer yet, so let's go back and look at the PDF viewer. So we have a brand new PDF viewer component, and here we go. It's under its own category there. So this gives us an embedded PDF viewer right inside of our application. No other dependencies are needed, so you don't have to pull in something from Adobe and whatnot. This just works out of the box, and it works inside of the context of your application.
Nice.
So you don't have to rely on browser behaviors and popping out in other tabs and those sort of things. Yeah. This is something that people have given us a lot of feedback on and have wanted in the control suite.
Yeah, and I think this is the reality for a lot of enterprise web apps. It's reporting, it's PDF processing. Right? And we're trying to give you all the tools to make you more productive.
And we have PDF processing libraries. Some stuff can be done in the browser, and then we have a full featured suite that runs on the server that can do all sorts of stuff, generate brand new PDFs from scratch, edit and parse through things like Word documents and do conversions from one type to another, all those things. You can build into your client a place where I can use a Telerik upload component, upload a spreadsheet or a Word doc, and then have the server convert that to a PDF and send it back down the wire. Really fairly easy to set up something like that with our components and our control suites.
Okay.
So we had the brand new PDF viewer. Let's see, what was the other brand new one here? The drawer component. Yeah, don't let me forget the drawer component. This is one of the cool new ones. It reminds me a little bit of the responsive panel. So let me go to the responsive panel first. So I'll show you the difference between a responsive panel and the new drawer component. So responsive panel has a lot to do with responsive web design, where we have our web page or a device that has a different screen size, and we want to allow some content to fly out. So this is just generic content that can be anything. It can be menus or all sorts of other content that just pops out from the side. That's a really nice component, and I love that one. This is a little more opinionated and concise. So the brand new I'm fat fingering the mouse over here and clicking on the wrong stuff. The drawer component is a little more opinionated than the responsive panel, but you get this nice flyout effect. It's very similar. You got the same type of iconography for that hamburger icon to make the menu appear. You can also have icons for like shortcut type of menu item behavior here. And then if you click on this, you get the nice flyout effect with the full names. And that's just one example of how to use it. And if you're a Windows user, you're pretty familiar with this sort of behavior already. If you can see my start screen here, if I click on this button up top, That's the same type of thing
Right.
that is the drawer icon. So this is an interface that people are already familiar with, and now you can put that in your web application. There's also different modes. There's a mini mode. Let's see here. You can control which side of the screen it comes from, and you also have a way of programmatically controlling where it comes from.
Yeah, I think Laurie Dickinson was asking, like, the drawer starts out closed. I'm sure there's a programmatic way of starting it out, showing the contents.
Yeah, there's full APIs. If you click on the API tab, you've got examples in here, and then you also go into the documentation and see the full API for that. So I'm going to go back to my slides for a moment. That's all of our really hard-hitting stuff. A lot of feature enhancements I won't walk through all the details on. And I may have accidentally dropped a slide in here. I did. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I got a little out of order on my slides. So I want to talk about Telerik UI for Core real quick. You'll see those same feature enhancements, new components and whatnot, but we also have tag helpers. So tag helpers is a new way of writing component markup for ASP.NET Core that's a little bit different than the HTML helpers. It's a little more HTML-like.
Easy to read. Yeah.
Uses tags and attributes. It looks like HTML. We also have official support for ASP.NET Core 3.0 preview. And we've separated out some of our NuGet packages to make those a little more ad hoc.
So I think, is it fair to say that everything that you can do with the Razor view engine, you can also do with tag helpers?
Yes. So all of the components, like the new PDF viewer, things like that, exist in both ASP.NET, MVC, and Core. Okay. But those are tag helpers are specific to Core. Okay. So you're not going to be able to get those in the older versions of MVC. Okay,
so that's all today. What's feature-facing? What's coming up tomorrow?
All right, so we are going to talk about the Telerik UI for Blazor next. So Telerik UI for Blazor. Blazor is a brand new framework that I'll go through and explain how it works here in just a moment. But we've already released our 1.0 that came out at Build. So during Build, we announced our 1.0 release. That means you get support for Telerik UI for Blazor. So you can file support tickets, right, and you can provide feedback and all of those things. We are committed to shipping Blazor on a regular schedule, and we're also doing live updates throughout the year as well.
And I mean, is it fair to say we are the first to release UI components for Blazor?
Officially supported, yes. Yes. Okay. So, and this is, if you haven't heard of Blazor before, it lets us do full stack ASP.NET apps without writing JavaScript. So this is something that people in the .NET community have wanted for a long, long time. Now we've got it. And Telerik's coming out of the gates with 18 components. Nice. We have some of the most popular ones, like our data grid. That's got a lot of really robust features already. Yep. We've got sorting and filtering and all the things that you'd expect from a data grid. We have charting components. We have date pickers and calendars, and some of those allow date range right, selection and all of that stuff. So let's talk about how it works really quickly for those that haven't heard of Blazor yet. Blazor works with native web technologies. So there's no plugins or any third-party thing I have to install. This is a Microsoft framework. It's not something that we've created. We're building components for this new framework. Now, it runs off of a web standard called WebAssembly. So what Microsoft has done is, with WebAssembly, you can compile C# code, C++ code, other types of languages to work directly in the browser. And what Microsoft has done is compiled the mono runtime, and you're using the mono runtime to run your .NET code in the browser. So you actually have a .NET runtime that's fully functional and in the browser. So this is how Blazor actually works. So we have .NET DLLs, we load those into the mono runtime, and they work just like regular .NET code because they are regular .NET code.
Right.
So this is really cool stuff. And we have quite a few components that are already out. So I'm going to jump over to some demos again. Let's go to demos.telerik.com real quick, just so we can see the full assortment of components that we have.
And while it's coming up, these are written from the ground up, from scratch, no dependencies, just pure .NET running front and back, right?
Yes, so there is a little bit of JavaScript code, but it is all brand new stuff, and they are written from the ground up. I'm missing the link for it for some reason here. Let's see. Blazor-UI should get me there. And no, it didn't.
It's just our
yeah,
firewalls.
that's what it is. Our firewall's stopping me here. So we're used to working from our home offices, and we've got some new firewall rules I'm not used to. I'm going to go directly into a custom demo versus the ones that are out on the web, but we do have a multitude of components, 18 in total.
So if you go out to Telerik.com and then kind of navigate down to UI for Blazor, you're going to see all of the demos just online.
So I've got a grid component here, and I'm going to go ahead and run this guy. This is all running client side, all C# code. I have my data grid. It's displaying some weather. And this is a nice pageable data grid. And one of the new features that we added for the data grid for Blazor is based on feedback. We have added a new grid height. So we've got some stuff going on here near the studio, so apologize for any background noise. But we've added this grid height property for the data grid, and this is something that has been a hot issue with developers that are using the new bits, and they asked for the ability to set the grid height using a string. So we can set 100% or 100 view height or 100 pixels, whatever you want to set the height to. Now we can do that, where before it was a little more hard-coded. So I can say 100%. Let me go back and show you like the grid example here now. We're not covering the full height of the application window, and I'd like to do that. So I'm going to add a grid height to 100%, and this is being data bound. So my Telerik grid has a height property that is bound to this string down here. Now, when I rerun the application, you'll notice that that data grid extends the full height of the application window. So now I have the ability to control that very, very tightly and make it as custom as I'd like. So now you can see the pager reaches all the way down to the bottom, and I can also control the page size as well and fill in that space if I'd like to. So that's some of the feedback that we got that was very important to us. And another, I hope this guy didn't break. Bleeding edge bits tend to break now and then, so we may have, nope, it's working. So I've got a chart example here I wanted to show. This is another piece of feedback that we got. We released the charts a couple months back, and people have been getting used to using these in the context of Blazor. And one of the things they wanted was the ability to data bind the color value to the bar charts. So I'm getting a little IntelliSense problem here, but let's try to reopen the file. There we go. IntelliSense is back up and running. So I have a Telerik chart and a Telerik chart series item. And what I want to do is bind the color field of the chart series to a value in my data. And again, these are bleeding edge bits, so I'm getting a little bit of unhappy IntelliSense or compiler behavior here, but I'm binding to this color property on my data set. And let's give this a try. Let's cross our fingers. Demo gods are not happy today. So that one's going to, that one did not turn out well. So we'll have to come back to that one at another time. But this is actually a demo that works online. You can see this on our Blazor demo pages. Let's try and get that up one more time. There we go. www. will get you past the firewall. So we'll navigate down to Blazor and demos. There we go. So this is all of our demos. We'll go to charts and we can see, maybe it's in our documentation. So this is added to our documentation. So our bar charts, though, you can bind the actual color field as well as the value. And we also have, if you go to themebuilder.telerik.com, you can see we have Telerik UI for Blazor in the theme builder, so you can start building a theme. I like to choose the Bootstrap theme. It's really easy to change colors. If we click Create, it will load all of the native Blazor components inside of this window. And we can go into our theme builder and we can choose color themes in here. And you'll notice when I click off of the color theme, it updates in real time and shows me what those themes would look like on those components. And the options here are pretty much unlimited. So I have some that are provided out of the box. For example, we could choose this urban theme here. Everything changes right there on the fly. And then we can go through and customize this as much as we want. And then we can download this new theme. You give it a name, it comes down as a zip. What's really cool about it is it gives you not only the CSS file, but it also gives you a SASS variables file. I'm a big fan of SASS.
Yeah, and I think I'm a big fan of the whole theme builder. So this is themebuilder.telerik.com, and it's not just for Blazor, it's for all things web, right? So you can look at all of our UI, customize it the way you want, and then just download the CSS or SASS or less.
So I can drop the CSS file directly in my app, or I can come in here and just grab the variables out of the SASS. And I'm a SASS developer. I love to use SASS. It makes things so much easier because I can just come into my variables inside of my application. I can paste those variables in. When I save that, it would then recompile the CSS that belongs to my site. And then notice, just that quick and easy, I've got a brand new theme for my application. So my data grid just took that brand new theme I created. So I'm going to jump back into just one more set of slides, and then we'll hand this back over to you, Sam. So last little bit about Telerik UI for Blazor. We took a ton of feedback, and these are just some of the feedback items that made it into the 1.1 release, which is what I'm showing you now. We made all of the events for the grid asynchronous. We added validation to the in-grid editors. We have GUID support for dropdowns. And I showed you the percentage values on the data grid. Then we've added things to our documentation. That last one on there is the chart thing that I was trying to show you. That is in the documentation, so you can just copy and paste that code into your application. We've got custom data sources and all those sorts of things we added, all based on things that people gave us as feedback. So we appreciate that feedback very much, and we'll continue to add new features based on what you are all asking for.
And I think with UI for Blazor, you can see how we are on the bleeding edge. We are pushing the envelope even before Microsoft comes out and says it's out there. We already have official bits out there. So play with those things. If you are going to stick to MVC and core today, you can ship apps comfortably. And we'll give you all of the UI. But if you would rather be on the bleeding edge and if you want to see C# working, so our UI actually also works front and back. You could have server-side rendering as well as client-side C#.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. You can totally do server-side rendering with Blazor. So all the demos I showed today were running completely on the client. All the code was written in C#, but you can also take that code and you can run it on the server side. Right. And you can utilize the browser as like a thin client. Right. And you're only shipping over little changes in events across the wire. So you're not repainting the page over and over again.
Right. I mean, the whole server-side thing might have interesting implications for if you're somebody who's building like an Electron app and if you want web components on the server side. So all exciting stuff. Again, you can see that on the web stack, we are pushing a lot to make sure no matter how you want to render our UI, be it straight up WebForms or MVC or Core, and then Blazor, we give you all the tools and support for all of the latest IDEs and theme builders to help you be productive. Right?
Yep.
Okay. Anything else for the web?
Just make sure you go download the latest bits. You'll find everything in the control panel, except I don't think Blazor's made it in there yet, but you can grab that from your account in NuGet feeds. You do need the Visual Studio 2019 preview to use Blazor. So if you're going to check those bits out, 2019 preview only. If you have the RTM version, it will not work. There are tooling features in Visual Studio 2019 preview that are required for Blazor still. And then if you go to Blazor.net, you will find all of the prerequisites to get started with Blazor.
Awesome. And is this part of DevCraft? We are thinking about it?
It is part of DevCraft Ultimate right now, and it will be part of Complete in UI very soon.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, that's all we had for the web side of the story, which is just a slice of what we do. Let's talk about the rest of the stuff. So like I said, R2 was a big release. We only saw the web side of the story. Once again, I'm Sam Basu, and this is Ed Charbeneau. Find us online anytime. Those are our social handles. Okay. Let's talk about mobile, desktop, reporting, and productivity, which is a lot of different things to cover in 45 minutes, but I'll try my best to be quick. At the same time, try to pause for the things that we want to explain. Mobile. Let's talk about mobile. As a .NET developer, I think Xamarin, the boat has sailed. Xamarin makes it very easy for .NET developers to bring our skills and our code to mobile form factors like iOS and Android. We are building truly native, truly cross-platform apps, and I think Xamarin is a great story. So there are a couple of different ways in which you can build Xamarin apps today. This is what it's been for a long time. This is traditional UI approach, which is Xamarin iOS or Xamarin Android, where you share the C# code, but you're building the UI heads for each platform. So you can do that, or you can do Xamarin Forms, which is my preferred way because I don't need to learn a lot of iOS or Android UI as a .NET developer. I get a shared UI code, which is in XAML, and then I get to write C#. I get to stay in my IDEs and share the maximum amount of code, and it just works across all platforms. So we don't want to hold back how you want to build your Xamarin apps. So however you're doing it, Xamarin iOS or Xamarin Android, you can actually kind of mix and match the two now. We want to make sure that we give you all of our UI that works everywhere for all Xamarin apps. So that's where Telerik UI for Xamarin fits in. I am actually very fond of this because I work on this product suite quite a bit with our engineering and PM folks. So let's take a look at Telerik UI for Xamarin. But first, just a quick look. If you are not using UI for Xamarin, you should take a look because we have spent a lot of energy on the last couple of years to make sure that we are maintaining productivity for Xamarin developers and letting you render our UI however you want. So this obviously works on Windows, and you'll see me use a Mac today. And we have full VS 2019 support for Windows and Mac. You can use our UI from a Xamarin iOS, Xamarin Android, or wrappers for Xamarin Forms. All of these UI is very performance tuned because again, you're building a native mobile app. We want to make sure the platform and the UI doesn't come in the way of you delivering your apps that are fast. It's very easy to pull in. We give you some VS templates to start off. In fact, some of the screen templates that we give you are very helpful. Things like a login screen, things like a drawer, all of those things can be built out of the box, like a master detail page. Those are all things we can build with Telerik UI. Or if you have an existing Xamarin project, you can just bring it in through a NuGet package. Do not take my word for it. On iOS, Android, and UWP stores, go out and look for Telerik UI for Xamarin. There's a sample app that you can download. You can play with all of our UI. I'm going to show you a little bit of that, but we also give you the code, so you see exactly how we are rendering some of the UI. Okay, so what's new in R2 2019? Again, it is a mature UI suite at this point, but we want to make sure we are pushing the envelope on things that developers will find useful to ship apps, things that are traditionally very hard to do by hand. And I mean, Xamarin gives you a lot of tools out of the box, but some of these things are meant to kind of give you that extra edge as you're shipping your apps. So new for 2019 R2 release is a map control. Now, this is not the map as a map that you can just embed. This is a little bit on steroids. And you can render a map, surely. But this is kind of based on the shape files, which is GIS and the SRE shape files, which is a couple of different file formats, but they are the file formats that define how we rendered the UI. So you give us those file formats, and then we will figure out how to render those UI on every Xamarin app. So this is, again, good for maps, but if maps is not, I mean, you get some of the maps kind of built in, but this is more for those use cases where you have like an airplane seating chart, or you have like a floor plan. All of those things are what we can light up with the map control, because again, it's defined and it's driven by very core and standard GIS file formats. So we take all of the things that you're defined and we render the UI for you. So that's the map control. We have a brand new image editor. So if you're building anything in your apps where the user takes a picture and you want to have them save the picture, maybe the next Instagram that you're building, we want to give you an image editor, which is fairly polished. It does some basic stuff, which I'll show you, but it also does some advanced image editing. And all of this is just ready for you to use out of the box. So your users can edit any of the pictures that they're taking. They can manipulate them, they can save it, they can roll back the changes, and it works seamlessly across iOS and Android. So that's something we are pretty excited about. Then we actually spent a lot of time with PDF processing. I mean, Ed showed you a little bit. All of this is kind of driven by our document processing libraries behind the scenes. These are libraries that work on top of .NET Standard now, so we can make sure it works consistently across web, desktop, and mobile. What we are doing on the Xamarin side of things is we have a PDF viewer, which is something we released last release in R1. So the user doesn't need to switch context. You can render PDFs right inside of your apps. It has support for all of the elements that you need in your PDF. You can have a continuous scrolling, and it's a very nice, fluid, intuitive UX that we are presenting. So new for this release is we made some tweaks. So make sure if you're loading up a giant PDF document, you can load on demand, and it's nice and easy to scroll with. And the PDF processing library is what's powering the PDF viewer. You can also use it standalone. So if you have any amount of content, be it HTML, be it XAML, that you're rendering on your screen, on your app, you can make that a PDF out of it. We can have APIs that generate PDF out of your screen. So that's something we're excited about. And again, it runs on .NET Standard. That's what lets us do all of those things across all platforms. All right, so let me show you a quick demo of UI for Xamarin, okay? So let me pull up Visual Studio here. And the app that I'm going to show you is what we call QSF. It's a sample app that we ship. So if you head out to Telerik.com and then the Xamarin product page, if you hit the big red download free trial button, this is the app that you're actually going to get. This is the same app that shows up in the app stores. So you have all of the code. You can see how all of the UI is behaving. So this one here has the app is a .NET Standard library, and then it has product or platform specific things for iOS, Android, and UWP. I'm only showing you the iOS version of things today, but it works the exact same way for Android. So let me go ahead and run this thing, and it's going to come up in my iOS simulator, because I'm on a Mac. It already knows Xcode, so there is an Xcode needed for all Xamarin apps to build. It doesn't need to be on your machine. It can be a remote Mac agent, or it could be in the cloud, but we do need Xcode to build the Mac. But I'm already on a Mac, so it knows how to build it, and it's going to fire up the Telerik UI for Xamarin sample app. Again, this is the same app that you can see when you download it from the stores. So up front, you'll see that we did a couple of things that are interesting. Hopefully the phone screen is big enough. So let's start with the image editing thing. The first look. So we give you a couple of images just to kind of have you play around with. Let me pick one. And down here is where you see some of the image editing options come to life. So we can rotate images, right? So all the way and back. We can flip images, like mirror images, and we can do that both from top down and side by side. And we can crop images, which is fairly nice. So you can let the user really zoom in and focus on what he or she is trying to do. Then we go into these modes of controlling how the image, the warmth and the color saturation of the image looks like. So this is our hue, this is our saturation, this is our brightness. You can see how I can just move a slider back and forth and changes the image brightness, contrast, blur and color and sharpness, it's all here. So all of these things are built for you out of the box. You don't need to do a thing. Just throw in this image editor, pull up an image either from a stream or from the user's hard drive, and it'll just light up all of these image editing capabilities for you. And you can also undo what you just did as a user, and then you can save it or you can discard it, right? So pretty simple image editor, but very powerful if you're doing any image editing and anything to do with images on your app, so the user can save and share on social media. So that's an image editor. Let me move on to the next thing, which is a map. Like I said, this is a map control that kind of is driven by some pretty standard GIS file formats and ways of describing how we render the shapes, right? So these are shapes that are coming from just a local file. It can be any number of shapes, any type of shapes. We can define rectangles, polygons, and lines, and different types of colors and hues. This one here is a US map, and it shows kind of the population density of each state. And then this one here is, I mean, these are things that you commonly see in like different types of apps where if you want to check into a hotel, you can kind of pre-check in and you can pick a room. If you have like an airplane seat that you want to, seating chart that you want to render, all of those things again are defined by just standard file definitions, and we can render the UI for you.
One of the questions, Sam, was do you know of a tool that helps you create the shapes?
I mean, we will do the shapes. The definitions of the shapes is what you will provide.
Yeah, how do you create the definitions of the shapes, I think was the question.
I think ESRI has some tools, and then it's YML or CBP or a couple of other file formats that you create. I think there are some visual tools that help you define the shapes, but at the end of it, it's just kind of like an XML type file that you give us, and then we can render from that file.
So sort of like data binding, you provide the data, we provide the UI.
Yes, yeah. Because I mean, rendering it pixels on screen, that's hard. Right? So you give us exactly what you need, and we'll render it for you. So that's the new map control. Moving over, this is the new PDF processing that I was talking about. So any amount of content that I have, be it purely written up from XAML or any HTML, whatever you have, I can simply generate a PDF. And you'll notice that in a second, this is now a PDF, and I can share this, I can save this, I can do whatever I want with it. It is exactly pixel perfect of whatever the content that I just generated out of it, right? So all of this is out there for you to use. A few more things. We have done quite a bit of work on the calendars and schedulers, because again, these are the really difficult things to do across iOS and Android. So we have done some date range manipulations. If you are going on a vacation, you can choose very easily how the date range looks like. We spent a lot of time this year and last year. We have our charts and graphs, different types of dozens of charts and graphs that we are known for, very interactive. And then we also have conversational UI. If you're building bots, you can throw in some of our UI in front of your bots. You can see as we just go along, this one is connected to Google Dialogflow, so we are independent of the bot framework that you use behind the scenes. If I go to Travel Assistance, this is connecting up to Azure, so it's using a Microsoft bot framework. So we'll give you all of the buttons, the calendars, the schedulers, everything that you can throw in front to make these chatbots light up. So take a look at this app. It's all out there for you to use, and the code is out there for you to use as well. I'm going to stop here for just 1 second just to kind of show you. This is a quick example of what we do to render the maps. So notice how we can go off the shapes, and we can select what the things do when you tap on it. And all of this is defined. Here's my first look XAML. Essentially, this is my rad map, and I'm giving it some layers to define the shapes. And essentially, this is coming from my XAML CS says, here is my shape file. So it's a SHP or a DBF or a YML file that you give us. That's a standard GIS file, and we'll know how to render the shapes from you, right? So that's the map control. This is the image editing part of it, and just notice how simple it is. It's just literally nothing else but this rad image editor, and you can turn things on and off based on how many things you want the user to be able to do. But that just one line of control turns on all types of image editing that you just saw. And then this is the this is the navigation that I showed you. So you can save the images. Notice how we are just saving the stream, which is the image that the user has edited. You can save it to file. And then this last thing is what's powering our PDF processing. You'll notice that this is a raw view of how we can use PDF processing to actually generate a PDF document. So we can control all of the aspects of the document, give the document some properties, and then we go off what's called blocks. So we define every block, and then we paint what's inside those blocks, and that adds up to being one big PDF file. So take a look at this code. It's fairly easy, and it's all a standard .NET API that lets you generate PDFs out of any type of content that you may have.
Now, Alex from QA said that, I don't know which specific demo, but he said that, or they said that it'd be great for a medical app.
Yeah.
And I think there actually is a medical demo in there in maybe the chatbot or something.
Yeah,
but
there's a demo where if you are a healthcare professional or a hospital, once you have your physician's calendars in sync, it's fairly automated to get an appointment with somebody. So that's something we can power with chatbots. And also, if you're thinking about like healthcare scenarios, if you have like a big hospital and you want to show the maps inside the hospital, or like where people can go, anything inside of a big convention center or a hospital, the map control can really shine and help.
Yeah, but a lot of things in that demo app in general could be applied to the medical industry, so it's a really good demo. I think there are a couple specific ones that are too.
Right. So we give out a QSF demo that you can download and install. There are also some SDK browser demos which are kind of deep dive into specific features. So take a look. And again, the goal with all of this is to make sure we are providing the best possible UI for Xamarin developers, no matter how you want to render that. Okay. So let me close this, close out of this, and get back to my slides. So the point is, if you are building a Xamarin app, however you want to do it, Xamarin iOS, Xamarin Android, or Xamarin Forms, which is my preferred way. My 2 cents nowadays is always start with Xamarin Forms, because it gets you a lot of the way out there towards building a truly native app. And then if and when you need to dive into native land, you can always do that with native iOS or native Android code. And again, our UI works cross-platform. So ship your apps faster. Take a look at Xamarin UI. This is something we are quite pumped about, and we keep putting in a lot of love in our Xamarin suite. Okay, so let me look at my time. Yeah, we're doing about 15 minutes each. So let's do desktop, right? So this is it's sad when we refer to sometimes desktop as legacy, because this is what runs enterprise businesses, right? This is not legacy. This is what you live and breathe. And our Telerik UI for WinForms and WPF continue to be the most heavily used UI suites that we build, right? So let's talk about desktop. The big news is Microsoft is giving you a way to kind of modernize your desktop applications. Again, if you don't need some of these newer modern things, your desktop apps are going to be fine. .NET Framework is going to be fine for the foreseeable future. But if you would rather use some of the newer things in .NET Core, some of the newer APIs, or if you want to have side-by-side .NET runtimes, then you're looking at .NET Core. And the new .NET Core, we are at Preview 5, I think, right now. Sometime later this year is when .NET Core 3 is going to land, and it's going to bring some of the .NET Core goodness back to desktop, which is WPF and WinForms. So the big news for us is we have 2 big suites, UI for WPF and WinForms. These are both like 120 plus UI controls each. Really rich product suites, and all of it works on .NET Core 3.
That's nice.
Yeah. So even before Microsoft can officially say it's out there, we can say our stuff automatically works on top of .NET Core 3.
So this is really nice, because people were worried that they were going to have to scrap their existing apps and rewrite them for Windows 10 using UWP or something like that. And what Microsoft announced at Build is they've built these compatibility paths where you can now bring your existing apps into the modern Windows 10 platform. You can put bits and pieces of UWP in through XAML Islands, and you have a clear upgrade path now that doesn't mean rewriting everything.
And I think what you're seeing is kind of like a one Windows app, right? It doesn't matter. You will get access to some of the UWP APIs, and your WPF and WinForms app just run on .NET Core 3. And if you're using Telerik bits, we want to make sure that it automatically works for you. So let's talk about UI for WPF, and this is something we are also very passionate about because it runs a lot of enterprise businesses. Couple of big hitting controls that are new. One is a tabbed window control. We did this for a few other product suites, but again, it's very much asked for. So we did this for WPF. Again, if you're coming from a web app background, this will feel just natural. Any browser will let you do side-by-side tabs. And exactly what you expect from a tab-based navigation. You can move things around, you can pin things, you can do drag and drop, you can close tabs, and it's just a canvas for you to render your WPF UI, and it just works, right? So users can create, delete, and then move around tabs as they do on a mobile on a browser on their desktop. So that's the tab control. One new thing we're doing, and this is kind of big, and I really like this, it's the webcam control. So essentially, if you have a user that is doing, like we're not trying to build the new next Skype, but if you have like a quick login screen that you want the user to take a picture of or get a live stream of something for a meeting, you can use this. So it essentially taps into any camera that you have on your laptop, or it could be a USB connected camera, and we can get the feed. We can let you take a picture. We can let you save the whole video if you want. So it's just a nice view into what the user is doing from a WPF app. So think about this from like a kiosk type WPF app that you might be able to build and be able to sign in the user from a simple webcam. All of this is something we can light up.
What's really cool about something like this is you could tie it into Azure Cognitive Services or ML.NET, and then you can analyze the image
facial
and
detection,
do
you
all
can do
kinds
all
of
kinds of
stuff.
stuff. Yep.
Yeah.
And you can modify the color and the video adjustments that come out of it. Okay, so the ribbon control. This is something we already had for WPF and WinForms. It's actually been quite heavily requested that we have a different mode of the ribbon, which is a simplified ribbon. So we are saving a little bit on the real estate. So it's just now a toggle. So the users can toggle between a full menu and a simplified menu, and you get to choose as a developer which menu items show up in the simplified ribbon versus the full ribbon. And it's a very intuitive Office-like UI. You can have commands organized in a more compact interface, and it's just a simple toggle for the user. So more goodies on the WPF side. I'll show you this in a second. We actually have some new templates for .NET Core 3, which is funny because .NET Core 3 isn't out yet. But we can already get you going towards building WPF and WinForms apps that run on .NET Core 3. So you will have a modern WPF app with Telerik UI bundled in, design time support for all of your UI. You can change the theme from any app or any app UI that you have. And we have some new love that we put into our spreadsheet controls, new scatter and stock charts that we're putting in, and just performance tuning all around. So that's WPF. Let's switch gears to WinForms. Again, this is what drives a lot of your desktop applications. The simplified ribbon also shows up in the WinForms. Similar idea, but just maybe done a little differently for WinForms to kind of suit the Office type UI again. Simple toggle switch for the user to switch between a full ribbon and a simplified ribbon, and the developer gets to choose what's in each. Then this is a new thing. It's a domain up-down control. It's a simple idea, but again, it makes life a lot helpful when you have a drop-down that you're binding to some string, like a list of currencies, a list of countries, whatever. You can just do up and down, and you can go through the list and choose something. You can also do suggestions as the user starts typing. So we did that for WinForms. And more things, the file dialog control is new. So again, if you are dealing with any type of file dialog from your WinForms application, you don't have to trust Windows to do the old school thing. Your file dialogs can look new and modern. So we let you customize and theme the file dialogs however you want. There are actually three file dialogs. There's a save file, there's an open file, and an open folder dialog. Three different dialog boxes that will let you kind of go into the file system of the user and be able to choose a file, download a file, and have all of this be able to be themed. And it's just a more intuitive UX over just Windows. Okay. A few more things for WinForms as well. Again, the VS templates are new for .NET Core 3, which I'll show you. We have a new forms converter, which is actually pretty fun. So if you have a standard Windows Forms app, we can actually up-convert that to a RAD form, a Telerik RAD form fairly easily. Now, if you have even a single Telerik UI control, we can up-convert that into a RAD form, or RAD tabbed form, or a ribbon form. So if you have an existing WinForms application that you just want to modernize and bring some Telerik UI, you can just do it click with a very visual interface that helps. Another thing we're doing is, this is actually something we use internally. We have internal builds, obviously, and you can actually tap into those things. You don't have to wait for the full release or the service packs. You can actually, I mean, you're taking a risk because it's hot bits, but we give you bi-weekly builds ahead of our releases, so you can play with our WinForms stuff.
We saw some of those demo fails earlier.
But again, these are things you can have access to from your Telerik account on Telerik.com, so you can get access to our internal builds if you want, just for WinForms. Okay, so with that, let me show you a quick demo of some of the desktop things, and I am going to pull up Parallels Desktop real quick.
One of the cool things about WinForms on ASP.NET Core 3.0 is they completely rewrote the drag and drop interface for WinForms.
That's true.
So there's a lot of hard work that went in to the Visual Studio team to make that happen.
Okay, I want to be conscious of time. We got 20 more minutes to go, which is just enough time for me to show off some desktop, and then we'll look at reporting and productivity, because we have some fun things cooking on the productivity side of things as well. So I am running Windows on a VM. We'll let it spin up for just a second. Okay, there we go. So let's do WPF first. And again, this is a sample app. So if you go out to Telerik UI for WPF, just look at the demos, download this. If you're on a Windows machine, you can just pull it up and play with it. You can download the bits and you can see the integrations that we have with Visual Studio. Some of the new things that we did is obviously the tabbed window. So this is just a tab window. Exactly looks like a browser, and it is a browser type interface almost. You can move things around. You can pin things. It is just what a browser looks like. And you can see how, this example actually also shows you the code as to how we render it. So it's just a simple, if I go in here in my tabbed window XAML, you'll see it's just a rad tabbed window. And then there are data templates that control the stacking of the different tabs. So that's something new to look at. This is the new webcam control that Ed was fond of. So it's just anything that you can think of where the user needs to be looked at from a camera. If I fire this up here, you should see in a bit. Yeah, there you go. So that's my MacBook camera that it's plugging into, and it shows me the view of what it's looking at. And if I look in my settings here, I can control the brightness, contrast, the color, and hue of the image that's coming in. And I can control the camera, the zoom, the focus, the exposure, all of it. Once you're done, you can let the user save that as a file, or you can save the whole video as a file. So you have full access to whatever camera that the user is connected to. And again, think of this from the standpoint of like a kiosk type of WPF application that you might be able to build. Ribbon views, again, these have come a long way. So if I go into the simplified ribbon, you'll see that this is my ribbon. Again, you get to define what's in it, and I get to toggle. So I can have the full ribbon with all of my menu items showing, but if you want to save some space for the user, save some real estate, give them a toggle option that lets you minimize the ribbon that they're looking at. So pretty nice ways of kind of saving some real estate. So that's WPF. If I switch really quickly to WinForms here, okay, so this is the WinForms demo. This is some of the domain up and down thing that I was talking about. This is where I get to, I can't zoom in very easily on the web interface, but go ahead and play with this demo. You can see that this is a list of currencies that I'm just scrolling through. This is the amount values. So literally any string or number, I can have a predefined list, and I can data bind it, and I can scroll through that fairly easily. This is the new file dialogs. So this is the select folder. This is the open folder dialog. You can notice how it can look completely different from what Windows throws your way. I can download a file. I can upload a file. All of these things are driven by a file dialog, 3 different file dialogs actually, that let you and your users look into the file system and do whatever they want with files. So those are some new things. The simplified ribbon looks about the same that you saw with WPF. Again, just a toggle that lets you switch between the full ribbon and the simplified ribbon. Okay, so all of this is out there for you to play with. The code is out there, so take a look at what we have done with WPF and WinForms. I think we are putting in all of the investment that we can with desktop to make sure we are keeping things modern, and we are helping developers be more productive towards building modern apps. Okay, so with that, let me switch over and talk about a few more things. We have maybe 6 more minutes left. So we looked at some demos. Let's talk about a few other things. UWP. This is a product suite that we actually open sourced. So this is UI for Microsoft's Universal Windows Platform Stack. And we have about maybe 24 or so controls. All of this is free and open source for you to use. In fact, if you use some of the newer templates, Windows Studio templates, they are actually built in. So you can use our grids and our charts, all of those things for UWP out of the box, and it's all free and it's open source. And we actually accept a lot of community contributions as well. So feel free to use and give us back your feedback, or if you want to edit something and do a pull request, we're all up for it. Okay, let's talk about reporting. We talk about all of these cool features for web, desktop, and mobile, but enterprises run on reports. And it's quite a daunting task to design reports in the first place and then be able to deliver reports across a lot of different kind of platforms. So what's new, again, is a lot of effort that has gone into our document processing libraries, our PDF documents, and we are putting in a lot of effort to make sure things are accessible. So if you have any accessibility needs, which is very important for enterprises, especially if you're doing work in the government sectors, we want to make sure that everything is very accessible. Things that count for accessibility is when you render a PDF report, we want to make sure things are easy to kind of navigate with a keyboard. Things are easy to kind of have a descriptive text. Things are easy to be read out loud if you have like screen readers. So anyhow, where you need to support like 501c or other accessibility standards, we want to make sure the PDFs that we generate out of the reporting solutions are fully accessible. And you can run it through any of the accessibility checkers that you have in Adobe suites or other products, and it should pass most of these tests. So again, we are putting in a lot of effort to make sure that we are supporting all types of assertive and other reading technologies, making sure all of the documents that we generate out of our reporting solutions, all of the PDFs are accessible. One big thing we did was support for a JSON data source. And again, I mean, this is not a brand new thing. You could bind our reporting solutions, like when you design a report either through Visual Studio or through the standalone report designer, you can bind it to any number of data sources, like a huge list of things you can bind to. But what is new here is some of the offline capabilities of being able to bind to a data source. So you can update a report just by pushing through some JSON from your data source, right? So this helps you kind of further have a self-contained reporting workflow, and you can generate these reports and be able to view them on web, desktop, and mobile. And we are trying to cut back on any external dependencies that you need. It's just pure JSON that you can feed your reports with, and it'll work with any designers that we provide out of the box. So that's something that's big. The rendering runtimes, this is something that's ongoing, and we've been working on this since last release. You will see that we already have support for .NET Core 2, which is obviously the one that's in production. But again, looking ahead at the future, we are at .NET Core 3 Preview 5. The WinForms and the WPF report viewers already work on .NET Core 3. Again, so later this year when .NET Core 3 comes out, if you have WinForms and WPF apps which are looking at the viewed, the reports that are being generated out of Telerik reporting, all of those things will work right on top of .NET Core 3. And we can also render this on top of Windows or Linux. So it gives you more flexibility, makes reporting available to a wider audience. So again, a lot of love is going into the reporting solutions because we understand how much enterprises care about reporting. So the Telerik report server is the other flip side of the story. It's one thing to be able to design and be able to generate reports. It's a whole other story to be able to deliver reports, because that takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of workflows. So if you are up for it, let us do it. This is a standalone web interface that lets you host reports and deliver your reports much more easily. So this gets a lot of the same love that we put into Telerik reporting. So any PDF reports that we generate out of report server will automatically have the accessibility standards met for all of your PDF documents, and it also gets the JSON data source. So again, if you are using Telerik report server, this is for like scheduled reports that you want to deliver to web, desktop, and mobile clients. All of them can be updated by simply sending out JSON from your data sources, and it's also accessible. So again, you can see how much we care about report processing behind the scenes, and the PDF viewers that go in for both web. You saw it for Xamarin, and it's true for WinForms and WPF as well. All right, so with that, I got 10 more minutes, maybe even less left. Let's talk about a few other things. So this is developer productivity. This is what keeps developers happy. The things that we need in our everyday life to be productive. A few things that go into this. Telerik Fiddler. This is very popular. This is the proxy. You want to always be in the know as to what's happening in your network layer. So this is obviously very popular for many, many years for Windows developers. It's an app that lets you capture traffic and manipulate HTTPS traffic and be able to have like a fake proxy to your API layer. One thing you may not know is we're also separating the Fiddler functionality into Fiddler Core and the UI, and we are rebuilding the UI as Fiddler Everywhere. And we are doing this actually as an Angular application. It's an Electron shell. So we actually have Fiddler now working for Mac and Linux as well. So give it a try. This is still early days, but we are excited about bringing Fiddler everywhere and not just be stuck to Windows. Moving on to Telerik Just Mock. This is a mocking framework that's very helpful if you're a .NET developer and you want to test your things. Because unit testing is important. It helps you have more confidence as you're shipping things. And Just Mock is the perfect solution for you to mock different types of external dependencies that you might have. And this is something that's included in DevCraft, but there's also a Telerik Just Mock Lite, so you can use that for free. The big news this time is we actually did some integrations. You can already have different types of CI/CD pipelines that you can hook onto Just Mock. There is a command line interface to it, but now we also have the new Azure DevOps pipelines, and we can integrate seamlessly with that, with your TFS code, with your workflows, how you do your nightly builds, how you run your scripts, and how you run your testing solutions, and how you render reports, and how you push things out between your builds. All of that can now be automated with your mocking framework, right? So a few of the sanity checks, if you're using like any type of prerequisites in your functions, we can tell you up front whether things are good to go. It's just more automation with less code. And if you're doing like asynchronous, async and await tasks, we can tell you the context of when things come back as a task to your calling function. We can tell you how things are working out and where you can mock things out when things are coming back, either as a awaited task or a non-awaited task as well. So a little bit of love that goes into your everyday coding to make sure things are sane for you. You're not missing methods. You're not calling into things. You're not awaiting on tasks that you're switching tasks without context. So we give you all of that out of the box with Telerik Just Mock. A few more things, then this is stuff we already did for last release, support for .NET Core 3, support for .NET Core 2.x, Visual Studio 2019 support. There is a new profiler, there is a new IntelliTrace, there is a new developer console to do everything with command line, and it just helps with the automation side of things. Now, this is a couple of things. I have maybe 3 minutes left. So let's talk about a few things that are kind of future facing. These are things that we're excited about. These are things you can play with right now, and you'll hear more about this later in this year from us. So AR VR is big, right? It's often considered the next iteration of human computer interactions, and we want to make sure that we are partnering with developers to provide solutions out of the box. So we have our innovation labs, we have our VR labs, and we have been busy trying to do what we do best, is data visualization with our charts and graphs. Yep. How would you visualize our charts and graph in a 3D interface? And it's just a whole different ball game altogether, where you can actually physically walk around your charts, and you can click and you can tap on things, you can expand and collapse things. So we have several demos that you can play with. These are all built on top of Unity and Unity 3D. So it works across all AR and VR. So HoloLens and Oculus and everything you can think of, AR or VR, our solutions will work for .NET developers. We have a couple of sample apps. There is a Twitter graph that you can kind of turn on for any type of event and see how people are tweeting about it. There is a sales dashboard, which is very useful if you're an enterprise, because like a lot of these like HoloLens type devices, HoloLens 2 came out earlier this year. These are kind of meant for enterprises, right? So you can kind of visualize some of these dashboard type things, enterprise reports, in a much more graphic 3D layer, and that's what we can enable to be able to explore and analyze your data like never before. So take a look at some of these applications. If you have an AR VR headset, take a look at these things, and we are continuing our work on this to enable more developers to be productive. And then one more thing we have coming out later this year. This is just a preview, and it's out in beta, so you can go ahead and start playing with it. It's something we call Unite UX. So we have been talking about this for years and years now. There is a gap between developers and designers.
Absolutely.
We don't speak the same language, and we need a better workflow that helps us be productive, and that whole circle be much more quicker. So this is going to be our attempt to make sure we are cutting down on that circle and that time. So it's a very productive environment where your designers can install some plugins on the software that they're already using, and it generates workflows, and it generates actually Angular and React code that your developers can take, and then they can turn things around very easily back to the designer. So it's a kind of a quicker workflow to make sure designers and developers are working nicely together and kind of accelerate the productivity as you are kind of building up and prototyping a new application.
No more throwing it over the wall.
Right. So it's early access. It's in beta, so you'll hear more about this later on in this year. But again, it's us trying to push the envelope and trying to do newer things to make sure we're keeping developers and designers more productive. All right, so I'm almost at time. Is there any Q&A that you would want to answer? Anything that's coming up?
I've been answering quite a bit of questions as we go. I think our team has handled them very well.
Okay.
So.
And again, I mean, we'll keep following up on these things. Neither of us had the time to go look on Twitter, but if you have been asking questions on Twitter, we'll go right back and try to answer your questions throughout the day today, and then keep the breadcrumb growing so we can answer more of your questions as they come along. So what are your overall thoughts on R2? Did we try to address all developers across the board?
I'll actually say the feedback we're getting in the Q&A has been very positive around PDF, the PDF viewer and generation stuff. It looks like people are really excited to get their hands on it and try out a bunch of different scenarios.
It may not be the most coolest thing you do, but it's what drives enterprise apps, right? So we want to put in the investments to make sure that no matter what type of app you're using, we're able to generate PDFs seamlessly, be able to view PDFs, and be able to support accessibility in our PDFs.
Yeah, making developers' jobs easier has a cool factor of its own, and PDF generation and all that stuff. It's a standard format that everybody uses, and it's a constant feature request, I'm sure. I know it was when I was building enterprise applications. It was, you hand the 1.0 release over, and the stakeholders say, "All right, now I need to print this to a PDF, and how do I screen capture this and email it to somebody?" And this helps you make that effort a lot smoother and easier.
Exactly. All right, so I think we are almost at time. We don't want to keep you for any longer. One last pitch I have. This is actually a slide from one of Microsoft events, and I like this because think about the digital economies that we live in. Think about the amount of impact we can have with our software, and we have some of the best tooling possible with .NET, with JavaScript, with different types of Visual Studio on Windows or Mac. We have all the rich tooling that we need to build amazing apps. So be it chatbots, be it traditional desktop applications, be it mobile applications, be it future-facing web applications with .NET front and back with Blazor, or be it just straight up JavaScript, you have all the ammunition to go build amazing applications. So we are here to be your friend and your trusted partner in providing trusted and modern UI for all of your applications, right? So thank you again for spending an hour and a half with us. Hopefully this format fit us a little better. Again, we are trying to cover as much of the products as we can in this short amount of time. Tell us how we are doing. If you would like things to change, please tell us. Once again, I'm Sam Basu. This is Ed. Those are our social handles. And again, reach out to us at Telerik or at our hashtag #HeyTelerik. Ask us questions. This is your time to tell us what you would like to see out of the products that you use and love, and tell us the things that you don't love, and we would like to fix those things up. And we want to thank you for all of your patronage. We want to thank you for using Telerik and Kenda UI bits. And if you're new to the family, hopefully we're able to show you all the different things we can show you to make developer lives a little easier.
Yep. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. And that's it from us for the R2 release. We'll see you next release. And thank you so much.